So I was really inspired by the topic today and by these beautiful graphic that they came up with for today's event. So I decided to create my own graphic to go with my talk. This is me going to the edge. And here's what I want to talk to you about today. Going beyond the edge. If you think about it, lots of people, when it comes to taking really big risks in life or trying new things, starting new projects, a lot of people go up to the edge. They look around, they check out the view from the top, but when push comes to shove, they just don't jump. And it's just way too scary. It's too intimidating, the fear of the unknown, what's going to happen to me, where am I going to land, what kind of shape am I going to be in when I do land. All of those things stop people in their tracks. So they stay put on solid ground where they have a perceived degree of certainty about where they stand. It's interesting because if you think about it, anything could happen at any time. We face uncontrollable variables every day. But yet, because the day-to-day is familiar to us, we accept it. It's only when you're standing at the edge of an unknown precipice that these variables of uncertainty stop us from taking the leap. I've always been pretty proud of the fact that over the years I've called myself a jumper. When opportunities present themselves, I'm pretty good at just going for it. Sometimes it works out for me, sometimes not so much, but I have this sort of innate belief that one way or another, somehow, somewhere, I will land, and I will land safely. But one of the things I've really learned over the past couple years is that it's not just about the landing. It's not just about that end result. It's really about what I want to call today this space in between. After you get that initial burst of inspiration and decide to start something new and take that leap, and before you land on the ground, there's a whole lot of space in between. And that is where you really need to learn to manage yourself. And if you think about it, it's actually like 99.9% of the experience is this time in midair when you're suspended in space, you have no idea what's going to happen next, and it's all about unknown and uncertainty. So when I made my first film, Motherland, I was a first-time feature documentary director. I had never done anything like this before, and I was terrified. It was all the unknown, all about the unknown. And I really was under so much stress and so much pressure that I really allowed those emotions to consume me. And it's interesting, the film ended up doing really well, but when I look back on that time, all I can remember is being miserable every step of the way. And I even remember going out to dinner with my father and saying to him, when this is over, I am never making another film as long as I live. I'm out, I'm done. And the truth was I wasn't done, and for better or for worse, I'm a filmmaker and I just can't help myself from telling stories. But I knew that if I was going to make another film, I had to figure out a different way to relate to my creative process and to be in it without letting all of that fear take over. So about a year later, I was at this health and nutrition conference, and there was this speaker there. He's a funny, sweet Irish guy. His name is Dave O'Brien. And he was one of the speakers at this conference, and not a particularly athletic-looking fellow, very sweet, very nice, but not superhuman by any stretch of the imagination. And he was up on stage, and he announces to the audience at this conference that at the age of 56, he's decided that he wants to run the 4 most difficult desert ultramarathons in the world. These are 155-mile races through 4 deserts on 4 different continents. You have to carry everything you need to survive in a backpack on your back. So food, medical supplies, your clothing, your sleep gear, all on your back. And it's basically 6 marathons in 5 days through the desert. And he says, there's only 2 guys on Earth who've ever done this before. They're both professional athletes. But I've decided this year, I want to try. So I was sitting in the audience, much like you are right now, and I remember thinking, what? First of all, what are these races? What are you talking about? And second of all, who are you? What makes you think you can do this? And what's that all about? And my mom had actually been really sick at the time. She'd been in the hospital. And I remember thinking to myself, my mom is not much older than Dave. And my mom doesn't even think she can walk around the block. why does this guy think he can run 600 miles through the desert? And what's that all about? So I just went up to him after the conference and I said, have you thought about filming what you're going to do next year? And, despite my previous trauma from my first film, I just knew this was going to be a good story. So I decided to jump. So now, I think before I go a little further, I think I should give you more of a visual sense of what these races are really about. So I'm going to share with you a clip from the beginning of Desert Runners.
There's a great quote, like a Roosevelt quote. The credit belongs to those who are in the arena. It's this whole idea of those who are, in the arena striving valiantly, and if they fail while daring greatly. I think what this provides you is this arena where you're gonna dare greatly. You may fail, you may not finish. But damn, you're gonna give everything you have.
So when I got to that first desert, I really had no idea how I was going to make this into a movie yet. I didn't have any funding. I had enough money for 2 plane tickets, so I asked my friend, who's a cameraman, if he would come with me, and the two of us just went. And we didn't have any funding. We didn't have any characters other than Dave, but I just knew there had to be an interesting story in there somewhere. And I also felt like this time I was going to have fun with the unknown. I was going to jump into this realm of uncertainty and learn how to enjoy it somehow and not be afraid of it. And I think maybe the pure, what these runners were up to kind of gave me that bravery to jump into the unknown again. So we started filming, and I think what I expected when we got to that first desert was that we were going to meet a bunch of the world's most elite athletes, people with chiseled physiques and superhuman strength, who were gonna run these races. And instead what I found was a bunch of ordinary people. There were about 150 people from over 40 different countries. And most of them were just there to test themselves. They just wanted to see, is this something I can do? I want to prove to myself that I can do this. And that really drew me in. I'm always interested in stories about real people and what makes real people tick. And I wanted to know what made these people think that they could do something like this. And not only that, but how were they going to deal with this in-between space? The time after the start line and before the finish line, this 155 miles of unknown in the desert, where it's chaotic and unpredictable and anything can happen. What was going to be their way of dealing with the in-between space? So I came up with a couple of questions that I wanted to ask everybody. One of the first things that people say when I tell them about these races is they say, oh my God, those people are crazy. So this was my first question. Why is this not crazy? And everybody would give me an answer that was kind of similar. They would say, it's not crazy because it's actually doable by human beings. And it's actually not a physical challenge at all. It's a mental challenge. If I can learn how to manage my mind while I'm out there, my body will do anything. So most of them had a strategy for dealing with the race that went something like this. They never thought about the race in its entirety. They only thought about, what do I need to do next? So it's 10 kilometers to the next checkpoint. I can do 10 kilometers. How do I need to do the next 10 kilometers? I put one foot in front of the other, and I have one foot in front of the other until I've done 10 kilometers. So they broke it down into chunks, manageable chunks. And eventually those chunks added up to the whole. But they never thought about the whole. They never thought about the finish line. All they kept saying over and over again was, what do I need to do next? Stay in the present, one foot in front of the other. So my next question, I really wanted to know what was at stake for these people. And I wanted to know what would happen if they weren't able to accomplish these goals. So I would say to them, how's it going to feel? What's going to happen if you don't make it? And they'd answer, I'll make it. And I would say, no, this is my Northern California girl filmmaker self. How's it going to feel if you don't make it? And they'd look at me and they'd say, I'll make it. And it wasn't until I got that same answer 10, 15, 20 times from different people that I started to realize they never even considered the possibility that they wouldn't make it. That conversation was not going to be allowed into their brain. They were doing this, and they were going to make it, and that self-doubt was not allowed to enter the equation. And that's really the mental physics of this, right? I jump, therefore I land, end of story. So as you can imagine, we saw a lot of carnage out there. This is a pretty intense thing to do to your body. I'm going to give you a little taste of that now.
My feet are so sore right now.
I've had friends who, we've been on holiday or something, and we're walking around the shops, and they're complaining because they have a blister because their flip-flop is rubbing them in the wrong place in between their toe. You're like, Jesus, I remember this time. When I had 14 blisters on one toe, You're lucky to have feet, buddy. You know what I mean? Like.
I was on the slot canyon up there, and I slipped on some rocks, kind of came down weirdly, and it just ripped my stomach wall, and, my intestine popped out. And so from that point on, I've been kind of putting it back in and continuing on, putting it back in, and it's, there's been some pain with it, but it definitely put me out of the running game, down to walking. There's nobody here at this race that doesn't have a high tolerance for pain, so looks like it's going to be a long one.
So I was taken by this idea of a high tolerance for pain, and that really led me to my next question. What makes this enjoyable for you? And I got the same answer. Hundreds of people from more than 40 countries, 40 different cultures from all over the world, and almost every single person had the same answer. It's the people you meet along the way. It's the camaraderie, it's the friendships, it's finding like-minded souls out there who have the same goals and dreams that you do, and knowing that you're not in it alone, and knowing that when you cross that finish line, that you cross it, and you cross it together. So as you can imagine, this was a pretty powerful year for me as a filmmaker. I traveled all over the world, I met friends for life, and I really learned what it means for human beings to take that leap and what we're capable of when we take that leap into the unknown and into that in-between space. But I want to share one more personal thing with you. When I got back to New York City, I had about 100 hours of footage, and I began my 2-year editing process to turn this into a film. I was 38 years old at the time. I was single. I just hadn't met Mr. Right yet. And while I was editing the film, I had this crazy idea. And I said to myself, I've always wanted to have a baby. I assumed I would do it before I turned 40. So maybe I should just go ahead and do it by myself. So I jumped. From the brave and everyday desert runners, I really learned that if you believe in yourself and you take those risks and you enjoy that in-between space, You will land, and you will land safely. But here's what I've learned since I've become a parent and how my thinking has evolved. There is no such thing as solid ground. There is no such thing as certainty. The idea that one day I will land and everything will be figured out and secure, it's all just an illusion. It is all in between space. It is all about those spaces in between. That is where everything in life happens. And it's all uncertain and unknown, but it's also all manageable fear. And it's really up to me if I'm going to consider it plummeting towards the earth out of control, or if I'm going to somehow learn to soar and call it flying. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's way beyond an ultramarathon. It's a forever-a-thon. It's a journey that lasts way beyond me. And it's also the most beautiful thing I've ever done. So I have one more photo for you. My biggest leap, my beautiful uncertainty. Thank you very much.